Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located. We're just getting set up. Um, Give me one second. Oh, okay. People are tripling in. So let's just get started. So today's brown bag is in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. As you may have known, if you've seen our social media, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We're trying to draw attention to the intersection of mental health and diabetes. And if you have diabetes or you know someone who lives with diabetes, you know that these two conditions are intimately intertwined. So today we're going to be talking about coping with the highs and lows of an invisible condition. And that is to say that diabetes is not immediately visible to the onlooker. When we're walking around on the street, you don't have a sign on your head that says, I have diabetes, but it's something that is present in every single aspect of our lives. And that can take a very unique toll on people with diabetes. Um, and if you are new to DPAC, which I doubt many of you are, we are a patient advocacy organization that operates on the state and federal levels. So our mission is to ensure quality of and access to care medications and devices for patients living with diabetes. And we educate and empower patient advocates to speak on issues relevant to people with diabetes. And we also educate lawmakers on the lived experiences of people with diabetes. And we try to make the whole process less intimidating. So today we have four panelists. We have a whole party, a gang all here. So first we have Hannah, who we were having some issues with her video, so she's gonna have her video off for now so that we can hear her properly.
Hello.
Hannah is a Champion Corps member, a recent college graduate, and has lived with type 1 diabetes since 2011. She is a passionate advocate for equal access to care, education, and a voice for those in the diabetes community. Next, we have Lori. Lori Harper was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1955 at age 2 and has been thriving with type 1 diabetes for nearly 70 years, which we were remarking earlier that we don't agree that she looks like she has been thriving for 70 years. She's a Joslin 50-year medalist and original participant in the medalist study, and she's a passionate advocate for older adults with diabetes. She's married with 3 children and 9 grandchildren, and Lori loves to travel and share her story. She's currently working on a new website, Type 1 Diabetic to 100, which is focused on living well with T1D into older age. And Jacqueline Kosh is a licensed psychotherapist from Maryland who specializes in managing chronic illness, trauma, anxiety, and depression. She received her bachelor's degree in business administration from the George Washington University and master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Lancaster Bible College. Jacqueline lives with insulin-dependent type 2 diabetes, and she and her husband have 2 children. Sorry, I'm not used to introducing this many people. Lastly, we have Lashley Austria. Last but not least, of course. She is a healthcare professional working in admissions and was diagnosed with diabetes in 2006, as well as ADHD in 2024. Since beginning treatment, including therapy and medication, she has gained a deeper understanding of the ongoing challenges and stigma associated with both physical and mental health conditions. Okay, so now that we've introduced everyone, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see everyone's faces. And my first question to everyone is to tell us a little bit more about your experience in the intersection between diabetes and mental health. And were you always able to make the connection between mental health and diabetes? And you can guys just jump in whenever.
Wanted to give everyone a chance to speak.
Sorry, I breezed through that.
Well, I'll just say that I don't really think I ever made a connection until I became a therapist. And this is kind of like a second career for me because I was a recruiter at first. Um, and so it wasn't until then, I would say maybe a couple years ago when I was like, I learned what diabetes burnout was and distress, and that's when I said I had to make some changes. So I mean, it's not a lot of type twos that want to wear devices and do all the things, but I decided to do that because it actually lessened the burden of diabetes for me, and that's what I needed at that time. So I'm very happy with what I have going on now. But yeah, I don't think I made the connection until that moment.
I'm gonna piggyback off of what Jacqueline said.
Jacques,
Um, Jack Hill. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
So I mean, I was diagnosed with diabetes at 2006, but it wasn't until I got my official ADHD diagnosis last year, where it made sense. Because before my ADHD diagnosis, it was chaotic. Like I was being given so many meds because they were
Mhm.
trying to lower my A1C. It would never get lower until I went to therapy first. It had done some work prior to the ADHD diagnosis, but once we added the ADHD med that worked for me, I mean, hopefully now I get first and foremost, I live a happier and healthier life. And second of all, I just went to my doctor before coming here. I might be removed from one of a GLP-1 medication.
Um,
So, I mean, it there is a very much deep connection between the stress of managing a chronic illness such as diabetes and also having something unknown, whether it's ADHD or other mental health conditions that might be treated, whether with therapy or other methods as well.
I'll go. So I feel like a lot of it, or a lot of the distress for me was I was diagnosed at 10 years old, and being a younger kid, like we're in the middle of the social media era and all this stuff. So you see people that look different than you, and you think like, oh, I want to be like them. And like being a diabetic growing up in school and stuff, I was the only diabetic. So like I wasn't used to anybody around me having the same thing or understanding what I was going through. And then growing up, going through middle school, high school, seeing people online, it's like it hurt a little bit, but then you can like find ways around it that really help me connect with other people and find other people through social media. So like it it hurt at first because I didn't know how to manage it, but once I figured it out, it really helped me in a lot of ways. And I feel like getting it so young also is really hard because you go your whole childhood a certain way, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden everything has to change, and you have to be more responsible, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. So I feel like it for a long time I felt like it took away from my childhood, and I had to become more mature faster. But I feel like it also in the long run helped because I grew up and I realized, it's okay. You have people and there's ways around it.
Well, I guess I'll jump in from a little different perspective. I am more involved in dealing with or communicating about my type 1 diabetes because growing up, again, we didn't have all the tools and social media, obviously, those things. I think caused an extreme pressure for competitiveness, and we tend to be competitive individuals. And I read something on another article I happened to read today, which I thought was powerful. It says, time and range is not a symbol of self worth. And there's
mhm.
competition. I'm a 5'6". Or I'm this, I'm that. That's not always necessarily who we are, and it doesn't determine who we are. And through the Jocelyn Medalist Group, as you age, you don't want to have an extremely low because those lows can do damage. That being said, was fortunate that I had parents that sent me to a camp with kids that had diabetes. So I think that was an important part of my life. But I also was in a small town where my mother went to the teacher every year, and every kid in my class got snacks with me because I had to take 3 snacks a day in addition to my meals. So, or 2 snacks, whatever. Um, so I'm just saying that's important if you're raising a child or somebody else, that we're not just diabetic. I'm a person with diabetes, and I like to say I manage it. I don't fight with it. I'm not a warrior. I'm a manager, and I try to do my best. So just saying. And I can also appreciate attention deficit. I'm pretty sure I have it as well. I've just never been diagnosed, but So it's another issue, something good to think about.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, wow, these are all such like valuable perspectives. I actually didn't even realize what a big variety of perspectives we had on the call. Um, I wanted to ask, I know some of you touched on this just now, but how has your understanding of mental health evolved since being diagnosed with diabetes?
I think I'll be the first to answer. Prior to my diagnosis, I would say, as someone who's never been diagnosed with ADHD before, it's like waking up every morning with 30,000 thoughts and deciding what to do every minute or every hour. And then when you add something like diabetes to it, it like it would take me a lot longer to do things like check my blood sugar, eat, things that a lot of people that don't have a condition like diabetes or do have a condition with diabetes without the ADHD, they take for granted. Because it is like you have to monitor it like 24 hours, both diseases, if we call them diseases, 24 hours a day, right? There's no sleep. You can't take off. Which is why I'm so grateful to be diagnosed with ADHD. Um, and also just having the technologies as well. So I wear a glucose monitor currently on top of my other medicine regimens. Just yeah, it's just you just don't people don't think the two are linked, mental illness or mental instability and a chronic illness such as diabetes, but they intersect all the time in daily life.
So now I'm going to piggyback off of you.
Mhm.
um, I personally do not think, well, no, not do not think. I personally believe I have ADHD, but I have not yet gone through the steps of getting an official diagnosis. So I just want to put that out there. But what you're describing has been my 17 years with diabetes. I always forget my medication. I always misplace my testing kit. I mean, it's just a constant problem. So what happened in this was fall 2023 when I said I got two children to live for now. I really need to focus and get my health under control. And I went to that endocrinologist appointment and I said, I need an insulin pump. If I'm going to have to take insulin and I'm constantly forgetting it, then I need to have something that where it's always with me. He then said, okay, if you're going to do that, get us a CGM. I didn't even know. I was like, what's that? What is a CGM? Like, what is that? And I mean, when I started using both of those, it was just so much easier. Like they had to marvel because my A1C has gone as high as 14.4. That's the highest I can from my medical records. Um, but it's now since I've been using both of them, they have been under 7 for like the first time in my life. And this has been probably about a year and a half of constant under 7 A1Cs. I didn't realize how much burden and how much stress and how overwhelming it was to take your medicine and make sure you got to, okay, are there carbs in this? Are you going to factor in how much, because I didn't learn how to carb count. I didn't learn all that stuff. So I was just like given, hey, do this amount of units for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And because they do it a little different for type 2. I don't know why they do it, but they normally don't give you the whole carb counting thing. And I just didn't know why sometimes I'm going high, sometimes I'm going low, because I didn't understand that there's units per carbs and it was not explained to me. So I had to learn how to do that to use a pump. And that's when everything just made sense. So I truly appreciate you acknowledging the connection because while I don't have an official diagnosis, I am a therapist and I'm pretty sure I have it.
I agree because not to go back, this conversation has been about us. I too am diagnosed with type 2,
Mhm.
but I mean, I was diagnosed with prediabetes at 13. So when I
Mm,
was 18, I was officially diagnosed with type 2. But since that, the unofficial diagnosis of inattentive ADHD wasn't announced until
okay.
a year and a half, over a year ago at 35. through, it wasn't like because I had diabetes, I was then diagnosed with ADHD. There was like life circumstances happened. And
Right.
then it just clicked for me to go, after seeing a therapist, to see a psych nurse practitioner who, like,
Mhm.
without a test, she was like, "Yeah, you got ADHD." And it was like, and then after I took the meds that worked, it's like the mind is quiet. I can actually do
Mm.
things like, oh, check my blood sugar, or if I'm low, I need snacks now. I'm not like constantly, oh, I'm like forgetting, or like, oh,
Mhm.
it's nerve-wracking to check my blood sugar. Or I use insulin pen. I don't use the pump at this time. So
Okay.
it's just like, because for type 2, you're right.
They don't
They
tell you
just give
any
you,
of it.
here's your units. They don't do like, oh, if you have to take certain types of insulin throughout the day. It's just like, these are your units. And it's usually not an endocrinologist, usually the primary care doctor that
That's normally
will,
the case. Yeah.
yeah. And then they will, then if your blood sugar is too high, like for me, I was at 14, 15 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my A1C, they were like wondering why, like, oh, you're not doing but I'm like telling them, hey, these thoughts, I can't, like, I'm trying to tell my doctor, who I've known since 2008, I don't know what's wrong. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling them, my doctor, like, this is like what it is. But sometimes medical professionals who don't understand,
They don't live with it, so they don't get it.
yeah, they think like
Yeah.
ABC instead of like
Mm-hmm.
A or G, like, should never work together. But sometimes that's always the case.
Yes. Agreed.
Uh, that you brought up some really good topics, and I've seen with the growth of diabetes, again, when I had it, nobody knew what it was. I had to travel over 300 miles to get a doctor that even to Joslin Clinic where they understood it.
Wow.
With that being said, one of the biggest issues and that really gets under my skin now that I've been looking at this a little bit more is the lack of endocrinologists in our country, in the US. And they're underpaid um,
Mm-hmm.
professionals.
They
You know,
are.
they're least paid. And
Mhm.
then you have my husband has type 2 and his family has type 2, and
Mhm.
they've had a lot various problems that could have been prevented if they've been better taken care of, strokes and that type of thing. It
I
makes
agree.
absolutely no sense that we don't invest better in our healthcare system, and that's what I'm really passionate and advocating about. And a couple weeks ago, we get together every 2 year in the Joslin Medalists. I was one of the original group, and I've been in it for 20 years. And we're passionate as adults that there are so few endocrinologists, and we have to be stuck to Medicare rules where you can barely travel because you may need supplies. It needs an overhaul, and we need more advocates. And it's not the doctor's fault. They work hard. Why would they, want to go in where they don't hardly make all that much money and they
Mhm.
have to pay so much to get their degree?
Mhm.
So I'm fortunate I found, but I had to go through 3 doctors after my doctor
Wow.
retired. And I've outlived several of my doctors, but I had one doctor for 45 years, and he saw me through
Wow.
pregnancies and everything. So that's a huge, huge issue, and we need to do better. And we need to educate nurses and everything about the difference between not necessarily type 1 and type 2, but insulin dependent versus
Agree.
non-insulin dependent.
I agree with
Because
that.
there are some horror stories for older people that are now in nursing homes or rehab where they think because you're older that you're type 2. Well, no, that you get older, and anybody, that's a big trigger for me. It angers me. So I don't know if I'm mentally, but I'm angry. So I'll leave it at that.
Mhm. And just like
I
you all are getting, y'all get the, oh, you must be type 2. If they find out I was diagnosed at 26, they do assume that I have type 1.
Yeah.
Also, I'm insulin dependent. Um, uh, if it's typical that a type 2 is older when they get diagnosed, surely no one knew what to do when I decided to have children, because it's not typical for a type 2 to be young enough to be considering children. So it's just a lot of, just like you guys get it, we get the reverse of it.
I get that
But
question a lot too as a type 1. I'm 24, and people will see me out in public, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, type 2," and I go, "Nope, nope, I'm a type 1." They're like, "Oh, I thought it was just for kids." It's like, no, anyone can be a type
Anyone
1.
can get
It
it.
does not matter. I could also be
Hmm.
a type 2 at this young age. It doesn't, it it
Hmm.
it goes both ways, and it's people, it's the stigmas. People instantly, they go to assume what they know from what they've been
Hmm.
told, and they don't
Agreed.
know the full extent of everything. And it's the
Agreed.
education that needs to be more,
Absolutely.
out there, that people don't get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as someone who got diagnosed at 18 with type 2, the only reason why I was diagnosed so young was because my dad had and his family have diabetes. And unfortunately, my dad passed away at 60 because of complications. He
Mm.
probably had ADHD as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, he unfortunately he had these serious I've seen it. So um yeah, he had stroke, heart attack, he had all the serious complications just because he wouldn't get it under control.
Hmm.
But now having the knowledge that I have now, he probably had undiagnosed ADHD. And my mom, who's a nurse, couldn't get him to take his meds. It was just watching that as a kid, it was very traumatizing,
Hmm.
right? And as someone who, I guess it's weird to say that I have a second life because I'm so grateful to be diagnosed with ADHD, but also I have this other life too that hopefully I can live longer than my dad, but also I have a lot of life experience too that I guess people that create laws or things like that are supposed to help people. As someone who works in the admissions part, it isn't the hospital's fault. It is definitely the insurance companies. Not
Hmm.
to go after them, but like it's definitely I was in my doctor overhearing other patients with their issues with insurance. There's nothing the doctor can do except
Hmm.
whatever the government, the laws are, and what the insurance says. That's what they abide by, and nothing. All
Yes.
we can do is just advocate to lawmakers
Yes.
and tell
Mhm.
them like, hey, this is our lived condition, because a lot of times lawmakers either push it under the rug or don't want to admit that there's a health crisis until it is
Yeah.
too late. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have already briefly touched on this, but I'm gonna ask, diabetes can be invisible, as hence the name of this session, to the average onlooker, both physically and mentally. And what burden does that place on you as the person who deals with it? And I'm gonna group that in with the next question too, is how have you ever felt the need to mask your diabetes, or how hard it is to manage, even from people close to you? And if so, is this to avoid judgment or unwanted attention or something
Oh
else?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
yep.
I
I,
definitely have masked personally because um I guess because I'm in a Black community, we only really hear a lot about type 2. And then when you hear a lot about type 2, you assume somebody's lazy and fat, and then here I am actually overweight, obese, I guess, and I'm fitting every stereotype. I have diabetes all rampant through my family. Um, and then my family is from a West Indian, South American country. So it's like, oh, it's the food you eat. You guys got to change your whole diet. And everything is just stigma, stigma, stigma. And because of that, I have definitely masked prior to wearing a pump. I definitely would like go in a little secret corner and or go in my car and do my shots or whatever because I really just didn't want to hear it. The fact that someone else without diabetes is eating a whole package of Oreo cookies and they're telling me that I eat poorly just because of how I look or because I'm type 2 diabetic. And I'm like, didn't you just see me eat a whole salad? And like, get out my face, you know. So it's really stigmatizing, and so I did hide it for a long time. However, I'm no longer about that. I want to make sure other people understand that no matter what you eat, no matter how you live, you can still get it. There are risk factors. And that's all it is. It doesn't mean you can't get it. It doesn't mean if you eat poorly that you will get it. It just doesn't mean that. So,
Yeah, I think back to the stigma thing, I feel like it's a lot of people just aren't educated on that. And I feel like for me, when I was younger, especially, I would hide it a lot because, like as a young kid, you don't know if you can correct adults. And it's like, I know what I'm talking about, but
Hmm.
we'd be out in public at a restaurant. I'm eating, a lot of carbs or, have dessert or something like that. And they're like, oh, you sure you can eat that? Like stuff like that. And it's like now I correct everybody and every time. And I was actually recently just in Florida and I was at the supermarket and someone, came up to me. They're like, oh my gosh, you got it on your arm. I had my CGM and my pump. And they're like, it's that bad. And I was like, no, actually I'm not bad at all. Like I'm actually very healthy. It's just something, it's how I manage it. It's what I have to do. I'm type 1, like because she thought I was type 2 and I was like, but regardless of the situation, whether it's type 1 or type 2, it's just because I have these things, it doesn't mean I'm not managing it well. It's that it actually helps me manage it better. It's just the stigmas. People see it and they instantly go to what they thought or what
Yeah.
is told to them. And it's like I feel like that has made people mask it a lot too, like especially me, especially when I was younger. I always did, but being part of DPAC and seeing other people and other adults and meeting other people that have lived with diabetes twice 3 times the amount of years that I've lived with it, and seeing them be able to do it, like that gives me encouragement to be able to be like, no, like I can correct people. Like it makes me feel like I can take control of myself and my diabetes and be like, no, like, because those people will take it on and they'll pass on that information. I feel like that's the best way to like
Hmm.
cut the stigma down. It's just, you just got to educate people and correct them. It might not seem like it's okay to correct them, but it is, because it's your condition, not theirs.
Agreed. Yeah.
I agree. As someone who grew up in the Filipino community, I mean, there's a lot of diabetes that happens in the Filipino community, but also I mean, I can speak for myself. There's a lot of shame in
Hmm.
having a chronic illness such as diabetes, whether it's like within my own family or outside. It's like people think that you just eat too much or you have no control in eating when, I mean, these technologies that are available right now were just not available, not even a decade ago. Um, and I mean, like I said, it wasn't until a year and a half where I took control of my diabetes. Just because like I simply came to a point in my life where I decided to move out, move out of home. And in turn, like I've been rewarded by like I live this happy life. I'm grateful for where I am, and also I'm grateful to have found Deepak because I mean, if there wasn't a group like this, the isolation would have been a lot worse.
Hmm.
And people don't realize the power of community, especially right now. um and I'm just grateful, just to even, it doesn't have to be like we meet like every week or anything, but just grateful that there are other people that have diabetes and have taken control. Just to have that has just been more than enough for me, and be able to share experiences, because a lot of people
Yeah.
think, oh, we should just be quiet about like having diabetes. And I know this is just mental health awareness, but like just life experiences, when in fact there are going to be more people that are more receptive than not.
Hmm.
And to take to what Hannah said, like sometimes you just got to advocate, because there are a lot of people that just like they'll believe their own ignorances, because I'm used to that. I'm used to like within my friends, like I'm so used to like, oh, what is that on your arm, or why are you taking a shot in front of everyone? Like people are still very prejudiced about having chronic illness. And it's just like there are other people out there that can live with a chronic illness and it be okay. But for other people, it's just very hard. And that's why they have to feel like they hide it when it's just a part of life.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Laura, did you want to jump in? Or I can just move on if you.
I figured I'm kind of letting you move on since we have quite a few topics.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your consideration. You're always welcome to jump in. Um, I wanted to ask, you briefly touched on this in your most recent answer, but what are some tools or habits that help you stay emotionally grounded during tough diabetes days? And this also, feel free to touch on the topic of burnout here, because there are some people in the Q&A who are also talking about burnout, and how tough it is to deal with diabetes on a daily basis.
Burnout. I feel like I go through periods of time where there's just burnout. It's just, especially prior to my ADHD diagnosis, I felt burnout a lot more when I wasn't managing my stress. Um, e- and like, I guess to get out of it, just to set up routines. But even when having routine, it can be very difficult to follow through with routine.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, I give a lot of grace to myself, especially on difficult days, and people forget about the grace portion, or having empathy on yourself, especially when no one in the world understands where you're coming from. Just having grace and empathy, and also just moving along, even when it's most difficult, especially when life is very stressful and you have to do things like other things like, oh, what am I going to eat for the next meal, or what are my medications for like the next couple hours. Sometimes you just gotta forgive yourself and just take a breath and then be able to move on.
Mhm. I think well, I do this with my clients. I constantly talk about what their support system looks like. And as we talked about in the last question, um, I don't think people realize how important that is. So yeah, we have like maybe the Instagram community or whatever you have, whatever you have. But it even like that one family member or your good bestie or whatever you have that is willing to, maybe they don't have it, maybe they don't have any form of diabetes, maybe they know nothing about it, but that one person that kind of looks into it or asks you questions, or how are you feeling today. um I had I have my son, he wanted to learn how to do the bolus on my phone. So if I ever feel like, he was like, okay, mommy, how many carbs is in here? Okay, I'm going to do it. My husband has been asking me, like, okay, how are you feeling? Did you remember to change it? Because we're kind of getting ready to go to sleep. Don't let that alarm go and wake you up in the middle of the night. So did you change it? Like all those things. And I just feel like I'm really happy to have the family that I have, because even though none of them have it, my parents and my ancestors have it, but none of my husband or my children do not have it. I just feel grateful that they're there to help me, because there are difficult days where I just don't want a diabetes today. And
100%.
so, and they have come and they're like, okay, what do you need? What can I help you with? So that's very helpful too.
Yeah, I definitely feel like community is a big thing. For me, because I love my family. My family's always been supportive. They all know, they all are willing to learn more and more, and that's awesome. But I feel like a big part for me is having someone that also has it. So like I have a best friend, my diet bestie is what I call her. Her name's Emmy, and I fortunately got to meet her in high school, and she's one person like we always, like we're frustrated with our supplies or our blood sugar, anything like that. She's one person I know I can always go to that will completely understand where I'm coming from. I don't have to explain it or like try to see if they can understand it. So that's always like been my biggest thing is like I do know like I do have my family for support, but I can complain about, being a high blood sugar all day long and they won't physically understand what I'm talking about because they've never been through that. But like I can
Mhm.
tell her and she'll be right there with me. She's like, "Oh, I've been high all day too." So I completely understand. And I'm like, that makes me feel better too. And I feel like along with Deepak, like just mentally, like it's nice to know that you have someone that can understand that. Like it's not just you, it's not your own, like you're not the only one in the battle. Like you may feel different, but there's at least one person in the world of the diabetes community that is going to feel that same way. So I love having, my family support, my close one of my closest friends, one of my best friends, her grandma was also a type 2. So she's very on top of me all the time. Like, what's your blood
Mhm.
sugar before we eat? Did you take your medicine? Like she's always reminding me, like she's right behind my ear, which is nice. But having that person that is a diabetic, like my grandpa used to be a diabetic, And he understood. He's like, oh man, he'd always complain to me, my blood sugar's high today, what do I do? So it's nice to be able to have that communication too, and them say, oh, well, this is what I tried, this helped me. So I feel like, diabetes community, like, you don't have to overwhelm yourself. You don't have to have only diabetic friends, but to have at least one good diabetic friend, family, someone that you can turn to that understands it is one of the best blessings that you can have, especially having diabetes, no matter the type.
Hannah, you bring up a good point because when my father died, my grandmother had already died, but my father died. I did go through this very lonely period, like nobody really gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't really realize that one of the members of the church I sing at my church, she has type 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we ended up becoming kind of like diabesties, I guess, like you're saying.
Yep.
And when I was low on I was low on Omnipods, and she was like, I have so many, I'll just give you some. And then I let her try the Dexcom G7, and like nobody else understand. We will have whole diabetes conversations that nobody else gets. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think it's key.
I think having done going to the Joslin meetings has been important to me, and also the cruise that we did last year that I mentioned earlier was just so much fun, and we still are connected through social media. We're from all over the country. And another thing, this group, we've met up at the Banting Museum in Canada, and having those buddies and friends who really get it is important. Um, as a child, going to camp kind of made a difference, but I was fortunate to grow up in a small town. When I was 17, I went to Europe with the 2 nuns and 40 kids. That was a crazy adventure. But my friend was trained, and her mother was a nurse, and I carried syringes and insulin. But ironically, when she was 27, she was misdiagnosed as type 2. And I want to mention that happens frequently. Um, older people, she was diagnosed as she should have been type 1, and she had damage. So finish that thought. But increasingly, adults are becoming diagnosed as type 1 and misdiagnosed as type 2. And that's due to viruses and other conditions. I don't think mine was hereditary. I think mine was due to being prematurely born. And then my immune system kicked in, and it did so well, it just killed my pancreas. But there's something to say too for longevity in the family and that type of thing. But back to the subject, having friends and making sure they're not toxic or judgy. I think that's important too. Don't be afraid to say, or just say, okay, or cut somebody off politely, because it's not a competitive sport. There's no award for, having the best A1C. It's what's good for you. And again, the lows, the highs, and an occasional cheat day. We all do it. I've done it more than once. I could eat a whole buffet back in the day, but anyway, I'm just saying it's a good point to have a support group, and I think we're fortunate that we have social media. But don't overdo it. Go have fun. I do meditate on times. And I know how to go out of my head and go to a beautiful lake and just chill out. And that's what I said. I'll have a pity party and then get off the pot and keep moving. So that's my philosophy on those days.
Yeah,
I think you bring up such a great point too with um like having those, like being by yourself and finding a spot where you can calm yourself out, because I feel like that helps with burnout so much, because it's not a competition. I feel like going back to burnout, like seeing other people online, like, oh, my A1C is this, and it's like no competition. There should never be a competition, especially with the diabetes community. We're all different. Just because you can feel the same as someone, our A1C, journey is never going to be the same. No two people. It's like snowflakes. That's how I think of diabetics. Like all across the board, there's no two that are the same, and there's no two bodies that are going to react the same way. So I feel like that with burnout, like just remembering, like, you are you. You only have control of you, helps me like reconnect with myself. Like, okay, it's not a competition. It's not, how good can I do today? It's just about what makes me happy in life, and how I can be the best me that I can be with my diabetes, outside of my diabetes and all around.
Yeah, I wanted to go to some of the questions in the chat now. I think Zoe said this is why living with diabetes can become a very lonely thing. The public thinks that they already know how we feel and therefore are not even curious. And that really resonated with me to read as well.
Wow.
Because
Yes.
diabetes is so overrepresented in terms of like people see it a lot, people hear about it a lot, but really underrepresented in terms of knowledge about the actual condition. And people think, oh yeah, diabetes, they revert to their stereotype of diabetes as soon as they hear the word,
Mhm.
and they assume that they know a lot about diabetes. And that also goes in hand with it being an invisible condition where it's like there's a certain impression of a person when you see them, and there's a certain impression of diabetes. And it's a very unique disease in terms of the discrepancy between how much is actually known and how much people think they know about it. Someone else asked, have any of you ever felt depression or anxiety related to your diabetes diagnosis? And I realized we haven't explicitly talked about that yet. And that would be good to talk about on a mental health call. Personally, yes, very much so, especially anxiety.
Mhm.
If I can talk about it for a second,
Mhm.
the experience of going low or going high, like just the physiological effect of it is so similar sometimes to like having a panic attack or having physical anxiety that sometimes I get confused. And sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I'm going low, but actually my blood sugar is stable and I'm just panicking. And
Mhm.
we get so used to being in that physiological state of having like the heart beating fast and sweating and stuff that anxiety comes more easily to me at least. So that's my experience at least.
I
Mhm.
definitely get like that too.
Yeah.
I think I had a recent instance when I was swimming. That's like my fun thing to do is swimming. And I was swimming and I thought I was fine, but I guess the temperature. So I think that's something we don't talk about enough too, is that all the other things that factor into what your blood sugar is going to do. But the temperature of the water was kind of warm. And I think that was causing me to go low. And I mean, I'm starting to sweat. I got beads of sweat on my head and everything. And I had one glucose gel and I was like, this better do it because I got to get to the car I got to get dressed and get to the car. So that anxiety has caused me to start to kind of overeat before I'm going to the pool because I'm kind of scared. Like, I don't want to be low in front of all these people. So yeah, I think we constantly are thinking about, okay, what is my sugar doing? It's a constant and anxiety basically means you're worrying, you're fearing, you're panicking. So you're constantly thinking about it, preparing for the worst and just a constant thought about it. It's annoying. So yeah, I agree.
Well, one thing they say that a person with, an insulin dependent individual has to make at least 180 more decisions a day.
They did say
And
that,
that's
yeah.
true. And that's a lot of extra decisions. And um, I can relate to what you're saying as much as I try to use the devices and stay in range. I like to kayak. I like to swim. I used to swim across the lake and I didn't have any devices.
Wow.
God knows how I lived. But I was out there swimming and water skiing and so forth. And there's two factors: the heat, definitely, and that's where the device is. I love looking at this and seeing how it impacts my blood sugar. If I'm high and it's not coming down, I take a hot shower, and
Oh, I didn't even think of
I
that.
can see it go right down. It's crazy. I mean, and it makes sense because you're stimulating your body. But something that just not to be gross, but that can make your blood sugar go high. And I was having problems with constipation. I'm older. It was winter. I wasn't out moving as much. Whatever. Literally not moving. But anyway, and that can create. Sorry,
No,
I've
it's
got
fine.
comments too. So, um, it, it can stimulate other hormones that I
Mhm.
didn't know. That kept keeping my blood sugar high. And to make it kind of ironic and something to be aware of, my doctor was on maternity leave and I went to a young new, I think it was a physician's assistant, and she was being very judgy. And of course, I think that's a huge factor with diabetes. That I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I've got 69 plus years, and you just got out of med school, and you're going to tell me, what's going on. But she was like, oh, you're too high. Well, I was at 7.3 or something. I mean, it was under 7.5, which is for an older person, that's not unhealthy. And it was because that period of time I was having these stomach issues. So, look at what's going on. Be aware of your body. And I do find my best blood sugar is in range when I go on a cruise. I think my health insurance should pay me to travel the world on a cruise ship. I'm just saying, but throwing that in there.
I think a little bit to connect back with, just the support too is, if you don't have a good endo and you have people in your medical community that are, like, for me as a child, like, I had the same endo my whole life, being a child until they kept me actually until I was 21 because of COVID and everything. So they didn't get rid of me as fast. But I went through a few of their doctors, but even the nurse practitioners that I would see, like, some of them were just so discouraging and like very much put me down a lot when it came to my diabetes, because it's like you said, they don't know you during your 24 hours a day. They just know you that 30 minutes you're sitting in that doctor's office with all the information that they have in front of you. They don't have your day-to-day life. They don't understand that. So it's like, if you don't have a good, medical system, medical people in your life, I feel like that also can take away a lot from your confidence and your ability to want to take care of yourself and striving to do better, because it's like, oh, they're putting me down anyways. It's hard to feel like you're doing good. And diabetes is a day-to-day thing. I never look, even though it's a 3-month blood sugar overall, I look at it as a day-to-day thing, because every day is different. Every day I wake up and I feel different. So, and as a woman, all you would know, like, we go through changes all the time. I see it all the time as I'm getting
Absolutely.
older. I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now. And I'm like, you know what? My blood sugar's high probably because, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, or this is happening. I just, turn this age and all this other stuff. And I feel like, just for our own mental health, like, having doctors that are going to be there and be like, listen, we can get this under control. We got this. I feel like that goes such a long way to, even with anxiety and stuff like that, you don't feel like that pressure's on you all the time, which, yes, we have it, but it doesn't need to be a pressing force of pressure all the time. It should feel light and easy. And, even though it's not every day, it should be as much as you can, just because anxiety, depression, all mental health, it plays a big role on us, regardless of any situation. We're all going to, I stress and my blood sugar skyrockets for but a good 3 hours until I can calm myself down and relax. And then I notice, okay, I'm calm and it's back down. So there's always stuff, especially when it comes to doctors, though. I think that's a big area that we don't look at because we trust them. They're medical professionals. They're here to help, but what can you do?
Yeah, on that note, I was gonna say, I feel like, especially for people who are diagnosed as children, you kind of have an innate idea that the doctor's office or your doctor is like your one safe space, like the one person who actually knows what diabetes is. Even if, as we talked about on this call, we're encountering stigma on a regular basis at the grocery store, everywhere else, we're thinking, oh, at least when I go to the doctor's office, like, like they know what it's like. But if you go to the doctor's office and they're in your face telling you like XYZ, and they're not taking your opinion into account, they're telling you things that are inaccurate about your condition, or they're even misdiagnosing you for like several years at a time, it can feel like the most alienating thing possible. And I just like, it's so terrible that people have to go through that, especially with diabetes.
Yeah, I'm on my fourth endo for that reason. Exactly. Like, the first one was great, but he's probably so great that he's gotten too many clients or customers or patients. And now I've been through endo after endo, just trying to find the right one that actually is going to listen. And that's very isolating.
Yeah. My next question was, how has getting involved in diabetes advocacy, either with DPAC or, separately or any kind of self-advocacy, impacted your mental health, if at all? When you advocate for systemic change, does it feel healing or empowering in any way? We would hope the answer is yes.
100%.
I'll be happy to jump in on that one. I find it very empowering, and I found it to being retired now for 11 years. I've got more free time, but I still like to feel like I'm doing something or contributing, and I'm passionate about advocacy work now. And during COVID, it was being part of the Jocelyn Medalist Group was kind of where I started saying, there's people locked in, they have nobody to communicate with. And we have a private Facebook group, and you have to have the medal and, to be invited to join that. So I created another Facebook group and invited people from that group so we could have conversations every couple of weeks just during COVID, because being our age and having the type 1 diabetes, it was scary to think of possibly ending up in a hospital or something with COVID. And so I'm just saying that made me feel really good about giving back and being able to have other people I can bounce things off. And I'll throw out there, we not only have many people in our community not only have the type 1 diabetes or type 2, they have celiac disease and other invisible diseases.
Mhm.
And, I think these things relate. When you have a common condition and it's misrepresented on TV and so forth, advocating and educating can be empowering and make you feel like you might make a difference. It can be like banging your head against the wall as well. But that's something that gives me a lot of pleasure, trying to, the little successes. And I know enough to take those and say, good, we made one change, 2 changes, let's keep going. So I'll leave it at that.
I guess I would agree with you. I don't really actively do a whole lot, I guess, but I think just wearing my devices or answering the questions of those who didn't ask their doctor, um, me wearing my devices, I got like people in the church who are interested in continuous glucose monitors. They're like now asking their doctors for it, and I'm happy to sit and talk with them, and this is my experience. I think just that one-on-one interaction, I guess because I'm a therapist, that's what I do anyway, but I just think that it may not change the world, just me. I might not change the whole world, but if I can just get someone to say, hey, there's a better way to do this, or there's an easier way to do this, or there's something I want to try, or there's a GLP-1. Tell me about your experience on your GLP-1 and all that. I'm sharing my experience, and it makes me want to share it more, because if you know what to talk about, if you know what to ask for and advocate for, then you'll do it. And so I'm very happy to like be basically a diabetes walking book. Like, just ask me, I'm going to be open about it. I'm going to share my experience, because my hope is that you don't have to go through 4 endocrinologists to figure out somebody who's going to help you. I want you to know how to advocate for yourself. So it does my heart very well to know that that's what I'm doing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think another aspect of advocating and mental health is the fact that diabetes is such a powerless condition where you feel like you don't have control over your body, you feel like you don't have control over your mind sometimes. It's definitely like I tend to say that it's one of those conditions that gives you the illusion of control and you don't actually have it. And so it's very frustrating when you see your blood sugars, go up and down. You're like, I did everything right, and it's not listening to you. And I feel like advocacy for me and others has been something where it's like you can actually concretely do something within the realm of that topic, and it makes at least it makes me feel like, oh, like, well, maybe today I couldn't, get my blood sugars down, but at least I could, like do XYZ for my community, or I could do this and, like cause some kind of positive change. Makes me feel better about myself as a person, and makes me feel like I'm being productive, even if I feel like a failure, the way that we feel like failures every day. My next question is, on days when our bodies aren't listening to us, like I said, what would you say to someone who feels like they won't make a difference, they don't have anything meaningful to contribute, or feels overwhelmed on where to start when it comes to advocacy or mental health in general?
Um, I'm very big on self-care. I'm very big on your self-care impacts others. So, in my personal experience, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and if I am not taking care of me, there's no way I can take care of everyone in the house. So, I always say self-care is family care. So I'm doing what I have to do. And if that means I need to take a nap when I probably could be cooking dinner, I'm just going to have to take a nap, or I'm going to have to, take care of my blood pressure. I'm sorry, blood sugar, or whatever it means. I may not cook, and I like going back to what I said way earlier, is that I do have the supportive family who understands, and and that's very helpful. But I'm not going to endanger everyone if I'm have a low, but I need to cook dinner, or I need to buy dinner. I'm not going to do that. So I think just prioritizing your health needs and remembering that you taking care of you impacts all these people. And you just have to kind of tell yourself that, like, I'm not being selfish. I'm not being selfish. I'm actually helping whoever I need to help, whoever I impact. So that's one thing I'm big on.
Yeah, I can imagine that as a mother, that would extend to more than just diabetes too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, let me throw in there though, when the 9 grandkids are over, I found the best management of blood sugar is have a bunch of grandkids there. The only thing is, if you do ring around the rosy at my age, it's hard as heck to get up. Just saying. But yeah, I'm time and range is great, but when the grandkids are over, so but as far as again, as far as advocacy, I think everybody has something important to contribute. And I think it's even having this conversation, we're bouncing off each other. And we all share the frustration with this, with having an invisible disease, and a misunderstood and misrepresented, whether in media or anything else. I mean, I look at life with a very, my cup's half full, and I tend to deal with life from a comedy perspective. Everything's funny. In some way, it gets twisted in my mind, but not everybody's like that. Um, that being said, bouncing off each other and sharing can make you think, oh, yeah, maybe that did bother me, but I suppress it, where somebody else might be more open about it. So, again, I think these conversations are great, and having more human contact than we have now because of social media and working at home. Build that relationship, go to whatever group you want and support different organizations, or do a Zoom call. These DPAC meetings are nice, they're great for people. So that's my ideas.
No, definitely. I think I mentioned it earlier too, is just like I didn't have as much confidence telling other people before meeting DPAC, before starting advocacy, before doing all these things. Like I didn't have the confidence to tell other people, like correcting them on diabetes and educating them and stuff like that. And I feel like seeing other people do it, and like me being young, it's also a little intimidating because, like just talking to people on the Hill and all that stuff, like, they've gone to school for years and they've been in this, world for years. And it's like, I'm just little me from, Michigan, and, they don't know me from Adam. And it's like, but it doesn't matter. Like you guys were saying, like even if you just make one small change, you change one person's life, it's a domino effect. It's going to show, it's going to prove, it's going to, give you the results that you want, not today, not tomorrow, maybe not in 5 years, but eventually it's touching one person. And I feel like it encourages other people, especially younger kids, that they can be their own advocate. They can say, this doesn't make me feel good, especially like if they're in high school and middle school and even elementary school, like, I don't feel good doing this. I don't feel comfortable being here, correcting kids and stuff like that. I feel like it's good role models to have for younger people as well. Especially me, seeing all of, everybody that's had it for as long as they've had, they're still so passionate about it, and they've lived with it for years, and it's like, okay, they've done it. They're proof I can do that too. Like I can do whatever they're proof.
Yes, I realize we're coming up on time. I just wanted to ask one final question. You can go around if you have something to say. What's one thing someone has said or done that has made you feel truly seen in your diabetes experience, in the intersection of diabetes and mental health?
I have to bring up that first endocrinologist who actually, after I've been told all the weight stigma, all the things that I could not have a child, that one um, endocrinologist is the one that put me on insulin in the first place. And he not only put me on insulin, he was there through the pregnancy. He told me to stay on it. He said, you're actually doing very well on insulin. I don't recommend you getting off of it. He gave me the confidence that I could actually experience motherhood, because I was previously told that I couldn't, because my numbers were crazy, it was hopeless, and that hopeless equates to like a form of depression, or even a grief that I would never experience something that I wanted so badly since I was younger, was to be a mother. And basically, many medical professionals told me, no, you shouldn't do that. So I thought it was hopeless. And this one man is the one that said, no, we're going to figure this out. And I really appreciate, like, he listened to what I had to say. He made me feel seen. It was very, you know, important to, like, I still think about it. I really wish I can get back on his patient list, but he's booked.
I'll go next. I mean, compare it, like the only thing I could ever think about, how this past year has been for me, being diagnosed with ADHD. And the first the day after I got diagnosed, I took ADHD meds for the first time. I felt peace. I felt peace and quiet.
Mm.
Because a lot of people that say that taking ADHD med for the first time is the peace and the quiet. But also there was a level of grief that I've never felt for failing myself. And then like the third thought I had was actually like, I can go live my life now. I get to be loud. I get to feel like what it's like to live at my, not only at my potential, or more so what can I excel at? Because I didn't realize how much life I had missed because of being undiagnosed and untreated with ADHD, and how that went with the diabetes as well. I felt like I was missing out on a lot of life, which is why I'm so grateful for both diagnoses, especially as we approach the end of Mental Health Awareness Month.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like it's a very unique aspect of diabetes and the intersection of diabetes and mental health
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of touched on.
That's a very powerful, what you have to say is very important. And with ADHD being as common as it is, I to be honest, I never thought of it in that respect, having both. And again, I have family members, and I probably have ADHD as well. So that's something that is great to hear your success with that. But as far as, I think having, again, back to having medical staff understand and be sensitive to, we're human beings, we're not robots, we're not going to go, we're going to live our life. And I go back to having one doctor, and when I decided to have children, that was the first time I really got depressed about having diabetes, because I was scared it would impact my child. And it was a tough 9 months. And now I call him my science project. He'll be 46 in December, because he's and then and then from there I have the my next son, and then my daughter. But it was interesting because I was in the hospital with another woman who had diabetes about the same length of time. I was 27 when I had my son, our first son, and she didn't push that. We both had C-sections, and because they did a bikini cut for her, they did the other type of, the longer cut for me because they had trouble. But when it came to healing, I got up the next day as much as it hurt, and that was just my way of approaching. I'm not judging, but she ended up in the hospital 5 more days to heal because of our different personalities and approach to pain. So again, I go back to meditating, or whether I go to a lake that I just love to swim in. It's a beautiful lake. I grew up in the Adirondacks, so I'm fortunate to have that memory in my head, and that's what helped me. And then but back to it's I'm kind of going off topic, but I'm saying the main thing is we need, if we had more doctors, they'd have more time, and we'd have more nurse practitioners. And it doesn't have to be an endocrinologist, a nurse practitioner or a nurse educator. That's huge in our country, whether it's diabetes or anything else, but particularly with diabetes, type 1, 2, it doesn't matter which type, because the knowledge that you need to really manage it, not all general practitioners have the time to keep up on the technology, the paperwork, all the nonsense that we go through. And to even be, when you turn 65 and go on Medicare and have to have a blood test, when I had it for 63 years to prove that I'm type 1 diabetic, which makes no sense. I need insulin, whether I'm type 1 or 2, is just crazy. And the costly to the medical field. Why do that? That's where people who have diabetes should be part of making the regulations with Medicare. They should be part of the information and impacting. And that's why DPAC is so important. We have ADA guidelines that nobody seems to follow, but there's no consequences for them not following it. That's where we need to kind of look, stir things up a bit. And that's not stir it up, but get things changed, because it shouldn't continue like this. So again, I'll stop grandstanding. I get going on this. I apologize if I get too involved, but
Yeah, I think one of my biggest things was, DPAC definitely made me feel like being just that first time we stepped in a room together on Hill Day, seeing all the diabetics in one room, I was like, wow, there's a lot of us. And there's a lot more people that, care than you think. And I also got the chance to be the founder of the diabetic club at my university. And being able to do that and start that for all of those students, it's only been 2 years, so it's not a long run so far, but being able to start it, get that out there for other students, I think has been such a big difference for me. Because like I said, I've only had the one diabetic friend throughout high school until I became an adult and started working with other people and, different areas like DPAC and stuff like that. And the Diabetes Network or Diabetes Link now, they're an amazing resource for college students. They're so helpful, and they care. And it's like that's what we need in our communities. We need people that care and actually want to help and want to be there for us. So I feel like that made me feel, seen, and like I was, not just a normal person, but I was a normal person. It's that good middle ground where it's like, I wasn't the only one, but I felt like I was being listened to. So I think that was a big thing, especially in my diabetes life, that has made me step out of my comfort zone a lot.
Thank you all so much. We are like way over time, but I wanted to make sure that we got everyone said everything that was on their mind, because I feel like this is a really important round back to have, and I feel like it wouldn't have done it justice if we cut it short. So thank you all so much for joining us on this round back, and thank you everyone for still hanging on to being present on this round back. We will have more mental health stuff up. We have already a good amount from beginning of May until now. We're still releasing mental health infographics and perspectives from other people. So yeah, follow us on social media if you haven't. And thank you again to all of our panelists for being here today. Face reveal.
It's me. Got a little bit more.
Thank you.